I got a little hat on my head. I got a little hat. I got a little hat on my head. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well, and it's time for a review of the new Westside Gunn mixtape, Hitler Wears HERMES 7. Anyway, this is the new buzz-building mixtape from Buffalo rapper Westside Gunn. First time I'm doing a focused review of his work on the channel, even though he has been dropping projects for years now, and effectively putting Buffalo on the hip-hop map. And he's not alone in that, because it's also thanks to his cohorts on the GRISELDA Records label, Conway, Benny the Butcher. They all recently inked a deal with Shady Records and should have a collaborative project out sooner than you think. And even though GRISELDA Records is mostly an underground phenomenon at this point, they are turning some big heads in the industry, whether you're talking about Freddie Gibbs, MF Doom, Questlove, Jay-Z, just about every music writer in rap. So even in the middle of the build-up to their Shady debut, GRISELDA is keeping up their usual output, especially Gunn, who seems to be the most prolific. And this is just after dropping the 6th installment of this mixtape series last year, a full-length album. Earlier this year, this tape's been getting a lot of press. It sees Gunn building his name up even further with some celebrated names like Currency, Fat Joe, DJ Drama. We have production from the likes of DJ Green Lantern, also Static Selecta, also Alchemist. Of course, there are plenty of placements for his brothers in arms on this project too, Benny the Butcher and Conway. Now, listen to a Westside Gunn project and you'll notice a very distinct style and set of themes right away. Gunn's very high voice, his very high nasal voice, is instantaneously attention-grabbing, for better or for worse. His wild inflections are pretty unmistakable, even if they aren't entirely original. Because there is something about his rap style that reminds me of a very specific era in Ghostface Killah's discography, like the early 2000s era Pretty Tony album, Bulletproof Wallets, especially Supreme Clientele, though Gunn kind of makes that creative connection for the audience already with his record last year, Supreme Blientel. Gunn's flows on this tape and most of his projects aren't super fast or skilled. Every once in a while, he's not afraid to slightly slide off tempo or stretch a vowel to its breaking point, and he never holds back on his trademark ad-lib, even if it's mixed so high it's overshadowing his main verse. Boom, 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 boom! Boom, 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 boom! Get used to that. So Gunn's delivery can feel a little sloppy sometimes. Is that intentional? Probably. More than anything, the focus on this project seems to be on just sounding as grimy as possible. In his best moments, Gunn exceeds on that front to the point where it makes up for his shortcomings everywhere else. And those shortcomings are mostly lyrical or structural. Truth be told, Gunn is not really much of a songwriter. Dude can rap, dude can write, but build a song out and create different sections or passageways, not really. In fact, there are tracks on this thing that are so underwritten they feel just not finished, or just like they're utterly pointless motifs, mere impressions of songs that only exist to capture a fleeting vibe and then evaporate into nothing. While there's something about Gunn's style that reads classic, reads old school, a time when there was substance in hip-hop. There are a lot of tracks on this tape that are just as forgettable, just as breezy as your average SoundCloud kid doing some auto-tune riffs over a generic trap beat. What is Love You, if not that? What is Size 42, if not that? Connie's Son, Gondek, even if that track does have one of the better beats here. And there are moments where these tracks are so bare, so simple, they remind me of other East Coast rappers that also like to play it stripped back, Rock Marciano, Ka, but somehow Gunn doesn't manage to achieve the same minimal appeal. Now, as far as the writing goes on this project, the bars, I wouldn't say they're terrible. Gunn can write some verses, but it's all pretty one note when you observe it across the entirety of a whole project. There's a lot of references to high fashion, cocaine, dealing, violence. One thing that makes Gunn's writing sound slightly more eccentric than any other rapper rapping about these same things is he works in a lot of wrestling references and not just giving nods to Ric Flair in the way your average rapper does these days. So for sure this makes Gunn stand out. That and his attempts to blatantly cross unfiltered thuggishness with high-class decadence. I mean, just look at the cover on this thing. The ski mask, the Balenciaga coat. Also, if we go back to Supreme Blind Tell, we have the gun, the Fendi stocking going over his face like he's gonna rob somebody after wearing a designer stocking. So I do commend and respect Griselda heavily for being so consistent with the visuals, with the marketing. It's actually pretty artsy and kind of reeks of authenticity too. I mean, certainly Conway, Benny, and Gunn have given us no reason to question that up until now. But I feel like I have compliments and compliments and compliments for everything other than what is happening on the tracks on this tape. Because for me, at the end of the day, it really only sounds cool and intriguing on the surface. For the most part, Gunn doesn't seem to be able to, or at least care about, wanting to write an intro, a bridge, a hook, a topic, a narrative, I don't know. He just kind of blurts out whatever loosely connected bars he can string together. It's all just a non sequitur soup, in a way that reminds me of what Action Bronson was doing on some of his breakthrough projects like Blue Chips, as well as Dr. Lecter, obviously with way fewer food references. Don't get me wrong, there are moments on this thing where Gunn can come off genuinely charismatic, and he says some genuinely sharp, braggadocious stuff too, like Ayo, don't try me, Cartier's came out in 90, find me in the cocaine spot looking icy, connect to know me on the first name basis, I'm looking tasteless, Chanel off the runway, you on the waiting list, which is slick, but also kind of plain. There's a lot of slang, but nothing you haven't heard before if you've been on every major coke rap record since the 90s. The wordplay is very light on this project, if here at all. On occasion, Gunn will say something totally out there, a wild simile, a weird scenario. Supreme Catcher Mask looking like Mike Piazza. Paul Smith Fish, we rain down with the choppers. But very little of it adds up across the tape because of all the topical redundancies, the lack of coherent songs. And of course there are plenty of spots on this thing where Gunn is actually overshadowed. Like on the track Banana Yacht, where Gunn is actually barely on this track. It's really a song by his feature guest, who raps a couple of verses and Gunn pops in occasionally. He also doesn't appear until the very end of the track It's Possible. For whatever reason, he dedicates most of the song's runtime to one of the most comatose verses Boldy James has ever recorded. Every Benny verse on this project, though, is great. Not only are his features, in my opinion, the best on this entire tape, but they're actually better than many of his verses on his recent Plugs I Met EP, especially the verse on the back end of Lucha Bros. That signing scales line was hilarious. But these are only a few of many moments on this project where Gunn ends up being one of the least interesting things on his own track. There were only a handful of songs on this tape that stood out to me as being supremely good, which is usually when Gunn himself is hitting a consistent flow, or we're getting a great beat, or the guest kind of carries the track a little bit, like on Kelly's Corner with Fat Joe, or on Cool G with Conway and Benny, which has such good chemistry on it, it has me psyched for that collaborative record. Or on Undertaker vs. Goldberg, which has a great beat switch after the first leg. I love the woozy transition of synths and horns, that fat, dusty-ass beat. But as long as we're talking about production on this thing, it is kind of a mixed bag. Every once in a while here, we get some dirty, fat, classic hip-hop drums, creative use of synths, awesome sample manipulations. Other times instead, we get a very stale sample loop just playing over and over and over and over. Again, the track Banana Yacht, this singular string sample here, is this production? Is this a beat? Also, Lucha Bros. And mind you, I do like this track, but this one soul sample playing again and again and again with only a few change-ups, it's mind-numbing. And look, there are some artists out there that I think pull off this minimal, repetitive instrumental thing very well. But usually when they do it, the sounds they bring to the table are a bit more evocative, or the lyrics they bring to the table are a bit more thoughtful, or there's a narrative, or there's a concept. They make up for that instrumental simplicity by providing other things to stimulate your mind. But with Gunn, there's not really another layer beyond what you're being presented with on the surface. Look, there are a lot of tracks on this tape, despite Westside Gunn's very standout delivery, that to my ears are just unmemorable filler. And that goes for the short tracks and some of the longer tracks too. Honestly, the vibe of this tape is the best thing that it has going for it, the best thing I think Gunn has going for him across most of his catalog. If that's the wavelength you operate on, which there's nothing wrong with that, and you want to hear something that sounds a little old, grimy, dusty, cold-blooded, then give this a shot. you'll probably love it. And I suppose I don't mind it either. If this thing were playing somewhere near me, I wouldn't be scrambling to turn it off. I feel like I'm listening to something I've enjoyed before, but now it's being presented to me in a diminished capacity. I'm feeling a light to decent 5 on this one. Transition. Have you given this tape a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Westside Gunn, forever.